The day I returned from vacation, my computer screen was as blank as a newborn's conscience. 20 years of my work, compliance records, audit trails, contracts worth millions, deleted. All because our new 29-year-old boss thought my filing system looked too boomer. He stood there, grinning like he'd just invented fire, completely unaware that I'd been preparing for this exact moment. That one encrypted backup I kept at home, it was about to save the company $500,000. Or end his career with a single sentence. My name is Madeline Carter, and I've been managing compliance at Helix Point Corp for 18 years. That Monday morning in March, I walked into our Denver office with a grande Americano and the satisfied exhaustion that comes from 2 weeks in Cabo. The kind of vacation where you actually forget your work passwords. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt normal. The reception area looked the same, all glass and exposed brick, trying desperately to look like a Silicon Valley startup despite being a financial tech company that processes pension funds. But when I reached my desk, something was off. A yellow sticky note was centered on my monitor. "Welcome back, Maddie." Nobody calls me Maddie, not since middle school. I wiggled my mouse. The screen lit up to show a fresh Windows installation. Desktop, empty. I clicked through to the shared drives. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step going downstairs. Gone. Everything was gone. 2 decades of meticulously organized compliance documentation, contract templates I'd refined through 3 recessions, audit trails that could tell you what Bob from accounting had for lunch on March 15, 2019. The entire regulatory framework that kept us from getting obliterated by federal investigations. All of it vanished like it never existed. "Oh good, you're back." The voice belonged to Brandon Knox, our new director of digital innovation, 29 years old, Stanford MBA, and the kind of person who unironically uses the word disruption in casual conversation. He'd started 6 weeks ago while I was gone. Hired directly by the CEO after some TED Talk about reimagining corporate infrastructure. He stood in my cubicle entrance wearing dark jeans and a hoodie that probably cost more than my car payment. His Apple Watch buzzed every 30 seconds. "Brandon," I kept my voice level, professional. "Where are my files?" "Right, yeah, about that." He leaned against my cubicle wall, making the whole structure wobble. "So I implemented a complete digital transformation while you were out. Total restructure of our data architecture. We're talking cloud native, API first, completely future-proofed." I stared at him. "My files. Where are they?" "Oh, that old stuff?" He actually laughed, a genuine laugh, like I'd asked about VHS tapes. "Digital housekeeping, Madeline. All that nested folder nonsense, files labeled with dates like 2008 Q3, final V2. Such boomer energy. We're streamlined now. Everything's in the cloud with intuitive naming conventions. Boomer. I'm 38. I learned Python before this kid learned to tie his shoes. You deleted 20 years of compliance documentation? Archived, he corrected, making air quotes. Well, technically deleted after archiving to make room for the new system. But everything important was migrated. Check out the new structure. It's gorgeous. He reached over me, his cologne aggressive enough to warrant its own HR complaint, and pulled up our new shared drive. Folders with names like Stuff, Important Things, and Legal Whatever stared back at me. No version control, no date stamps, no logical hierarchy that would help anyone find anything in under 3 hours. This is... I stopped myself, picked up my coffee, took a long sip. When you say everything important was migrated, what exactly was your criteria for importance? Active projects from the last quarter, everything else was legacy bloat. He checked his phone, already losing interest in the conversation. Trust me, Madeline, you're going to love how clean everything is now. It's like Marie Kondo for data. If it doesn't spark joy, it's gone. Spark joy. He'd just thrown away our entire legal DNA because it didn't spark joy. I smiled. The kind of smile I'd perfected during my divorce proceedings. That sounds very innovative, Brandon. I'm sure you kept detailed logs of what was archived and where. Logs? He blinked. Madeline, the whole point was to eliminate that kind of redundancy. Fresh start, clean slate, tabula rasa. He walked away, probably to disrupt something else, leaving me alone with my empty screen and my carefully controlled rage. I opened my desk drawer, pushed aside 3 years of performance reviews he'd probably consider legacy bloat, and found my personal phone. One text to my husband. Hey, can you check that the external drive is still in the tax receipts box? The black one. His reply came quickly. Still there, still blinking green. Why? I smiled again, genuine this time. Every Friday for the past 5 years, I'd taken home an encrypted backup of our critical systems. My own little insurance policy, hidden in the most boring box in our house. Paranoid? Maybe. But I'd worked in corporate America long enough to know that the only thing more dangerous than a cyber attack is a new executive with a vision. No reason, I texted back. Just checking. Brandon Knox thought he'd deleted the past. He had no idea he'd just written his own future. The next 3 weeks were like watching a toddler play with matches in a fireworks factory. Brandon held vision meetings twice a week, mandatory attendance, where he'd pace in front of a whiteboard covered in arrows connecting words like synergy, blockchain adjacent, and human-centered automation. He'd eliminated our hierarchy. He explained, because hierarchies were so 2019. Now we had collaboration circles and innovation pods. Madeline, he said during one meeting, pointing at me with his ceramic coffee mug that read, "Move fast and break things." You've been here the longest. Tell everyone how much more efficient the new system is. It's certainly different, I said. Which was true. Finding a simple vendor contract now required the detective skills of Sherlock Holmes and the patience of a Buddhist monk. I noticed procurement is using some interesting new templates. Right? So clean. No legal jargon. No legal jargon. In legal contracts. I made a note in my phone. Procurement using templates missing indemnification clauses. The chaos spread like spilled coffee on important documents. Janet from procurement couldn't find the master service agreements. She'd started copying old contracts from emails, changing the dates with words find and replace. Tom from maintenance lost 3 years of equipment inspection logs. Turns out, old boring stuff wasn't the best folder name for federal compliance records. The audit team was basically rebuilding their entire workflow from memory and screenshots. But Brandon was thriving. He'd gotten his picture in TechCrunch under the headline, "How One Millennial is Revolutionizing FinTech Infrastructure." The article called him a digital maverick and used the phrase paradigm shift 4 times. He printed it out and framed it. The frame was, of course, sustainable bamboo. I kept my head down and documented everything, every missing file, every broken process. Every time someone asked, "Hey, didn't we used to have a form for this?" I became the office therapist, listening to frustrations over coffee while mentally cataloging the ways Brandon's digital revolution was turning into our corporate Chernobyl. He deleted the salary band spreadsheet, whispered Marcus from HR. I'm literally guessing what to offer new hires. The compliance calendar is gone, Sarah from legal told me at lunch. I'm tracking deadlines on sticky notes like it's 1987. He renamed all the client folders to emojis. Kevin from account management said, looking dead inside, Goldman Sachs is now just a money bag emoji. I wish I was joking. Brandon, meanwhile, had moved on to his next innovation, replacing our outdated email system with a messaging app called FlowSpace. It had no search function, no threading, and messages disappeared after 30 days unless you remembered to star them. He called it communication minimalism. During his 4th vision meeting, theme, Embracing Digital Darwinism, he stood at the whiteboard drawing circles within circles, explaining how traditional data storage was like hoarding, and hoarding was a symptom of fear, and fear was the enemy of innovation. Some of you, he said, his eyes finding mine, are still attached to the old ways. Files from 2015, 2010, even earlier. But let me ask you this. When did you last need a document from 5 years ago? I raised my hand. Tuesday. For the Peterson audit. But did you really need it, or did you just want it for comfort? The federal regulators needed it, unless comfort is their new standard for compliance. A few people snickered. Brandon's jaw tightened, but he recovered with his TED Talk smile. See, that's exactly the old school thinking we need to disrupt. Regulators don't need documents. They need transparency. They need trust. They need documentation, said Sarah from legal. They legally need documentation. The room went quiet. Brandon's smile looked like it was held up with invisible tape. We'll circle back on that, he said, which in Brandon speak meant, I'll pretend this conversation never happened. Now, let's talk about replacing our legacy SharePoint with something I found called Noodle Sync. I stopped listening and checked my phone. Another text from my husband. That external drive is still blinking away, starting to worry it's becoming sentient. Feed it some cookies, I texted back. It's earned them. Every night, I went home knowing that in my boring suburban house, in a box marked Tax Receipts, 2019 to 2024, sat a small black drive containing everything Brandon thought he'd murdered. Every contract, every audit trail, every piece of legacy bloat that kept this company from becoming a case study in a business school textbook titled What Not to Do. Brandon thought he was the hero of this story, the young visionary clearing out the old guard's dusty archives. He had no idea he was actually writing a tragedy. And I had a front row seat, complete with popcorn and a backup plan. The only question was when, not if, his house of cards would need my boomer files to keep from collapsing. And when that moment came, I'd be ready with my boring, old-fashioned, completely essential external drive. Some of us still believed in saving our work. Call it generational trauma from the great Windows 98 crash of '99. Week 4 of the Brandon Knox experience, and the cracks were becoming canyons. The morning started with Kevin from account management standing at the printer, making a sound I can only describe as a wounded elk's mating call. What fresh hell? I asked, bringing him coffee because that's what you do when you see a grown man about to cry over office equipment. I'm trying to print the Goldman Sachs quarterly report. He pointed at his screen, where a folder labeled with a money bag emoji mocked us both. But the template Brandon migrated it's just lorem ipsum text and stock photos of people laughing at salads. Laughing at salads? Diverse people. Laughing at salads. Kevin took the coffee like it was a life raft. The actual template is gone. I've been rebuilding it from memory and screenshots from LinkedIn posts. By lunch, 3 more departments had discovered their own digital disasters. Payroll couldn't find the tax withholding tables. Brandon had marked them as redundant spreadsheets. Building security lost 2 years of visitor logs, filed under delete after review, which no one had reviewed. The best one? Our disaster recovery plan was ironically stored in a folder Brandon had named Probably Not Important before deleting it entirely. I documented everything in my notebook. Yes, a physical notebook, with actual paper. Because I'm apparently a dinosaur who believes in backup methods that don't require electricity or a subscription service. Brandon, blissfully unaware of the apocalypse brewing, announced his latest innovation during the afternoon all hands. Performance reviews would now be conducted entirely through emojis and GIFs. It's more authentic, he explained, clicking through a PowerPoint that looked like it was designed by a cocaine-fueled unicorn. Why write meets expectations when you can just use a thumbs up? Why say needs improvement when a confused face emoji conveys the same message? Because lawsuits, muttered Sarah from legal, loud enough for everyone to hear. Brandon's eye twitched. Sarah, I appreciate your vintage perspective, but we're building a culture of trust here. Documentation is just institutionalized paranoia. I wrote in my notebook, documentation is institutionalized paranoia. B. Knox. April 15th, 3:47 p.m. Witnessed by 47 employees. The real entertainment came Thursday. Brandon decided to give a live demonstration of our revolutionary new filing system to a group of potential investors. He'd invited them to see how Helix Point was leading the digital transformation in financial services. Watch this, he told the three suits who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. I need last quarter's compliance report. In the old system, that would take 15 minutes of clicking through nested folders. But now, he typed compliance into NoodleSync's search bar. It returned 1,847 results, including someone's lunch order, compliance with dietary restrictions, a meme about tax compliance filed under team building, and what appeared to be Brandon's own performance review, where he'd rated himself 5 fire emojis and a rocket ship. Let me refine that search, he said, sweating through his $200 moisture-wicking shirt. 20 minutes later, the investors left. I heard one say to another in the elevator, "Remember Theranos? This feels like Theranos, but for data management." But the universe was just warming up. Friday afternoon, Jessica from vendor management burst into my cubicle looking like she'd seen a ghost that was about to sue us. "Madeline, please tell me you have a copy of the Northbridge Logistics Master Agreement from 2022. My blood chilled. Northbridge was our third largest vendor. Their contract had penalty clauses that could buy a small country. Why? They're saying we missed a compliance milestone. Something about quarterly attestations. Brandon says those documents were redundant bureaucracy, and he can't find them in his new system. They want proof we met the requirements or they're triggering the penalty clause. How much? Minimum, $500,000. Maximum, they could terminate and sue for breach. I pulled up Brandon's beautiful new cloud system. Searched for Northbridge, nothing. Searched for logistics. Got a Wikipedia article someone had saved about the logistics of D-Day. Searched for 2022. Found Brandon's vision board for the year, featuring a picture of himself on a yacht he didn't own. When do they need it? I asked. Monday. Legal's in full panic mode. The CEO just called an emergency meeting for Monday morning. I looked at my notebook, then at my phone, where my husband had sent another photo of our external drive, still blinking green in its hiding spot. Then I looked at Brandon's office, where he was practicing his digital innovation keynote for a conference next week, complete with hand gestures that made him look like he was directing aircraft. Tell legal. I'll see what I can do, I said. Jessica left, and I sat back in my chair, contemplating the beautiful symphony of karma about to play out. Brandon had deleted our past, called it boomer energy, and built his kingdom on the ashes of 2 decades of careful documentation. Now that kingdom needed exactly what he'd burned. I could save everyone right now. Walk to my car, drive home, grab that drive, and be the hero before happy hour. But where was the fun in that? No. Brandon needed to feel the full weight of his digital revolution collapsing. He needed to stand in front of the CEO, the board, and legal, and explain how his innovative filing system couldn't produce a single document that could save us $500,000. He needed to marinate in the consequences of his generational arrogance. Then, and only then, would I reveal my boomer backup. I locked my desk drawer, put on my coat, and headed home for the weekend. As I passed Brandon's office, he was still practicing his keynote, saying something about data minimalism as a philosophical framework. Come Monday, he'd learned that philosophy doesn't pay penalty clauses. Monday morning arrived like a category 5 hurricane making landfall. I got to the office at 7:30 a.m., an hour early, just to watch the disaster unfold with good seats. The executive conference room, the one with the glass walls that Brandon called radical transparency, was already lit up like a war room. Inside, I could see CEO Patricia Williams, her face set in what we called termination mode. CFO Richard Tan was typing furiously on his laptop, probably calculating how many people he'd have to fire to offset a $500,000 hit. Sarah from legal was surrounded by bankers' boxes, looking like she'd aged 5 years over the weekend. And Brandon? Brandon was at the whiteboard, drawing diagrams that looked like a spider had fallen in ink and tried to escape across the wall. At 7:45, my phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. Emergency meeting at 8, all department heads. Can you think of anything that might help? I took my time making coffee. Added cream, stirred it counterclockwise, then clockwise. Watched Brandon through the glass as he frantically clicked through his laptop. His revolutionary filing system apparently revolutionizing nothing but his blood pressure. At 8 a.m. sharp, I walked into the conference room. The tension was thick enough to spread on toast. Madeline, thank God, Patricia said. Tell me you have good news. I just got here, I said, settling into my chair with practiced calm. What's the situation? Richard pulled up an email on the main screen. Northbridge Logistics. They're claiming we missed 4 quarterly compliance attestations. Each carries a $125,000 penalty, plus potential breach of contract if we can't prove we met the requirements. The documents must exist, Patricia said, her voice dangerously quiet. We don't miss compliance deadlines. They did exist, Sarah interjected. Jessica from vendor management confirms she filed them, but they were in the old system. All eyes turned to Brandon. Look, he started, his usual confidence cracking like thin ice. The migration process was comprehensive. If they were important, they would have been. They were all important, Sarah exploded. That's why we kept them. That's what compliance means. You can't Marie Kondo legal documents. Brandon pulled up his system on the screen. Let me show you the search function. He typed Northbridge 2022. The system returned a gym membership contract for someone named Brian North. He tried compliance attestation. Got back a Slack message about someone attesting that the coffee machine was indeed broken. Quarterly reports. Returned Brandon's own quarterly report to the board about his digital transformation success. With each failed search, Patricia's face grew colder. Richard had stopped typing and was now just staring at Brandon like he was calculating the young man's severance package. Brandon, Patricia said, her voice now arctic. Are you telling me that you deleted our vendor compliance records? The documents that prevent us from being sued into oblivion? Not deleted, Brandon stammered. Archived, streamlined. The old system was redundant. The old system had the documents we need to avoid losing $500,000. Patricia stood up. Find them. I don't care if you have to reconstruct them from memory or seance them from the digital afterlife. Find them. Brandon turned back to his laptop, clicking with the desperation of someone trying to will files into existence. Maybe if I check the cloud backup? You mean the cloud backup you replaced last month with blockchain-adjacent technology that doesn't actually use blockchain? Kevin from IT spoke from the doorway. That backup? The room went silent except for Brandon's increasingly frantic clicking. We could try to negotiate, Richard suggested. Maybe they'll accept. Accept what? Sarah interrupted. A PDF of Brandon's vision board, a screenshot of his TechCrunch article. Northbridge wants documentation, legal documentation, with timestamps, signatures, and audit trails. The kind of thing that, I don't know, a competent compliance system would have. Brandon had stopped clicking. He sat there, laptop open, staring at a folder structure that looked like it had been organized by a caffeinated squirrel. His innovative system, his digital revolution, his paradigm shift. All of it useless when faced with the simple request, show us the documents. How long do we have? Patricia asked. They want a response by end of business today, Sarah said. If we can't produce the documents, they'll formalize the penalty notice Tuesday morning. Patricia looked around the room. Anyone? Any ideas? Any backup systems Brandon might have missed in his purge? I sipped my coffee, waited. Let the silence stretch until it was physically painful. Brandon finally spoke, his voice small. What if? What if someone had copies? Like, personal copies? Personal copies of corporate compliance documents? Patricia's eyebrow rose. That would be against company policy. Who would even do that? Someone paranoid, Brandon said, then caught himself. I mean, someone with foresight, someone who maybe didn't trust the new direction. He was looking at me now. They all were. I took another sip of coffee. Are you asking if I violated company policy by maintaining unauthorized copies of sensitive corporate documents? Brandon's face was a masterpiece of desperation. I'm asking if maybe you had the foresight to preserve important materials. Interesting, I said, setting down my cup. Last month you called my filing system Boomer Energy and deleted it all. Now you're hoping I what? Secretly hoarded documents like some kind of digital doomsday prepper? The room was so quiet I could hear the fluorescent lights humming. Patricia leaned forward. Madeline, if you have anything that could help us. I looked at Brandon, really looked at him, watched him shrink under the weight of his own hubris. I might know of something, I said slowly. But first, I need to hear Brandon explain to everyone exactly what he did with our 20 years of compliance documentation. In detail. Brandon's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. His digital revolution was over, and he knew it. The only question now was whether I'd throw him a lifeline or let him drown in his own disruption. The external drive sat at home, waiting. $500,000 of salvation in a box marked tax receipts. But first, Brandon had some explaining to do. Brandon's confession came out like pulled teeth, slow, painful, and with a lot of unnecessary resistance. I implemented a comprehensive digital transformation initiative, he began, still clinging to his corporate speak like a life raft. In English, Patricia commanded. Brandon swallowed. I deleted the old file system. All of it. The nested folders, the date-stamped documents, the version controls. I thought it was redundant. Outdated. We had everything migrated to the cloud. Did we? Sarah interrupted. Did we actually have everything migrated, or did you just assume your algorithm caught everything? The algorithm was set to capture active files. Define active, Richard said, his CFO voice sharp enough to cut glass. Files accessed in the last 90 days. The room erupted, everyone talking at once, a symphony of professional panic. Patricia raised her hand for silence. You deleted everything that hadn't been accessed in 3 months? Her voice was deadly quiet. Including archived contracts, compliance records, legal documentation? I thought, Brandon started. You didn't think. Patricia cut him off. You played Silicon Valley startup with a financial services company. We're not disrupting pizza delivery. Brandon, we're handling pension funds. I let them stew for another moment, then stood up. I need to make a phone call. Madeline, Patricia started. Give me 30 minutes, I said, looking directly at Brandon. I want to be very clear about what happens next. I walked to my desk, picked up my personal phone, and called my husband. Loud enough for the nearby cubicles to hear. Hey, remember that external drive? The black one in the tax box? Yeah. Bring it to the office. No. Right now. Yes. I know you're working from home. This is important. 25 minutes of beautiful agony passed. Brandon had retreated to a corner of the conference room, his revolutionary confidence replaced by the look of someone realizing they're about to become a cautionary tale. Sarah was on her third coffee, annotating a legal pad with increasing violence. Patricia stood at the window, probably calculating how much this would affect her stock options. My husband arrived, still in his workout clothes, carrying a banker's box that looked like it hadn't been opened since the Clinton administration. He gave me a look that said, "This better be good," handed me the box, and left without a word. 23 years of marriage. He knew when not to ask questions. I carried the box into the conference room like I was delivering the Ark of the Covenant. Set it on the table, removed the lid with theatrical slowness. Inside, beneath actual tax receipts and a warranty for a toaster we'd thrown away in 2019, sat a small black external drive. Is that? Brandon's voice cracked. I plugged it into my laptop. The drive spun to life with a satisfying whir. On the screen, a folder structure appeared, organized, dated, beautiful in its boring efficiency. Helix Point Backup Weekly read the main folder. Inside, subfolders for every department, every year, every major contract, including a folder labeled Northbridge Logistics 2022's Compliance. I clicked it open, 4 quarterly attestations, signed, time-stamped, with full audit trails and supplementary documentation. Sarah actually gasped. "You backed up everything?" "Every Friday," I said. "Encrypted, offline, stored off-site. You know, like a paranoid boomer who doesn't trust the cloud." Patricia was already gesturing to Sarah. "Verify these are the correct documents. Richard, get Northbridge on the phone. Tell them we're sending the attestations within the hour." "Wait," Brandon said, finding his voice. "You've had this the whole time? You let us panic all morning when you could have..." "Could have what?" I turned to face him. "Saved you from the consequences of deleting 20 years of corporate history, rescued your digital revolution from reality. You called my system Boomer Energy. You said documentation was institutionalized paranoia. You literally told me that keeping backups was fear-based thinking. But the company will be fine," I said. "Your reputation? Your revolutionary filing system that investors compared to Theranos? That's a different story." Patricia was studying me with a look I couldn't quite read. "Madeline, this backup, is it complete?" "Everything from the last 5 years," I confirmed. "Updated weekly until Brandon's transformation, including the disaster recovery plan he filed under probably not important." Richard pulled up the first attestation on the main screen. It was beautiful in its simplicity. Dates, signatures, reference numbers, everything Northbridge needed to close their complaint. "Send it," Patricia told Sarah. Then, to me. "We'll need to discuss the policy implications of maintaining personal backups of corporate data." "Of course," I said. "Right after we discuss the policy implications of deleting our entire compliance infrastructure without board approval." Brandon stood up, laptop clutched to his chest like armor. "I'll go update the filing system, start integrating these documents back into..." "No," Patricia said. "You're done touching our files. Kevin, please disable Brandon's admin access to all systems." "Already done," Kevin called from the doorway. "Did it Saturday when I heard about the Northbridge issue." Brandon's Apple Watch buzzed. He looked at it, and his face went white. My TechCrunch interview. They want to do a follow-up about our digital transformation." "Perfect timing," Patricia said. "You can tell them all about how innovation without infrastructure is just expensive destruction." Brandon gathered his things, his sustainable bamboo water bottle, his messenger bag made from recycled sailboat sails, his dignity, what was left of it, and headed for the door. "Brandon," I called after him. He turned, hope flickering in his eyes. "The backup drive?" I labeled the folder, "In case of arrogance. Thought you should know. For your memoirs." The hope died. He left without another word. Within an hour, Sarah had sent all 4 attestations to Northbridge. Within 2 hours, they'd confirmed receipt and withdrawn their penalty notice. By lunch, word had spread through the office that Madeline's Boomer backup had saved the day. Patricia called me into her office that afternoon. The external drive sat on her desk between us. "This can't happen again," she said. "Which part? The deletion of critical data or the unauthorized backup that saved us?" She almost smiled. "Both, but mainly the first one." "Then you need someone who understands that innovation and preservation aren't mutually exclusive. Someone who knows that digital transformation doesn't mean digital amnesia." "Are you volunteering?" I thought about Brandon's empty office, his digital revolution reduced to a cautionary tale, his TechCrunch article that would now require one hell of a correction. "I'll need a better title than Director of Digital Innovation," I said. Patricia actually did smile then. "How about Chief Compliance and Information Security Officer?" "That works." I stood up, picked up my external drive. "I'll need to implement a proper backup system, one that doesn't live in a tax receipt box." "Whatever you need." As I walked back to my desk, drive in hand, I passed the spot where Brandon's motivational posters had been. Someone had already replaced them with a single sign. Save early, save often, save everything. Boomer energy, indeed. Tuesday morning came with an eerie calm. Brandon's office sat empty, his standing desk lowered to its minimum height like a monument to fallen ambition. The move fast and break things mug had been left behind. Now holding a small cactus, someone from HR had placed there with a note. This survives without constant innovation. I was in the middle of rebuilding our file architecture, the real one, with logical folders and version control, when Brandon appeared in my cubicle entrance. He looked different. The hoodie was gone, replaced by an actual button-down shirt. The confidence that used to radiate from him like body spray had dimmed to something almost human. "Madeline," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I saved my work 3 times in 3 different locations because that's what adults do, and turned to face him. "I thought you'd be at your TechCrunch interview," I said. "Cancelled it." He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Seemed inappropriate, given everything. Smart choice. He stood there, clearly wrestling with something. Finally, "How did you know?" "Know what?" "To keep the backup, how did you know something like this would happen?" I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "I didn't know you specifically would delete everything, but I've been in corporate America for 2 decades. I've seen 7 CEOs, 12 restructures, and more revolutionary innovations than I can count. You know what they all had in common?" Brandon shook his head. "They all thought the past was worthless. That experience was just another word for outdated. That anyone over 35 was a dinosaur waiting for extinction." I picked up my coffee mug, plain white, no slogans. "But here's what your Stanford MBA didn't teach you. The past isn't your enemy, it's your foundation. You can't disrupt something you don't understand." I understood. You understood theory, concepts, buzzwords. You didn't understand that Jessica in vendor management has been filing those attestations the same way for 6 years, because that way works. That Sarah from legal insists on nested folders because federal regulators don't care about your innovative filing system when they're conducting an audit. That my boomer energy saved this company $500,000. Brandon was quiet for a moment, then, "The CEO wants me to stay on. Different role. Learning position, she called it. And I don't know if I should. Everyone knows what I did. What I almost cost us." I could have twisted the knife, could have agreed, sent him packing with his tail between his legs and his revolutionary dreams crushed. The old Madeline, the one from Monday morning, might have. But watching him stand there, humbled and human. I remembered being 29, convinced I knew everything, making mistakes that felt world-ending, having someone senior enough to save me from myself. "You know what your biggest problem was, Brandon? Deleting critical files?" "No. Your biggest problem was believing that innovation means destruction, that to build something new, you have to burn down what came before." I gestured to my monitor, where the new file structure was taking shape. Real innovation, it's building on what works while fixing what doesn't. It's respecting the foundation while reinforcing the frame. Very metaphorical. Very practical. You want to know why I kept those backups? Because I've seen too many Brandon Knoxes come through here. Smart, ambitious, full of ideas. Most of them crash and burn. A few learn to balance revolution with reality. I looked at him directly. "Which one are you going to be?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Patricia wants me to work under you. Learn the compliance side. Understanding the why before I try to change the how. And you're wondering if you can handle reporting to the woman whose boomer files saved your ass?" Something like that. I pulled out a sticky note, yes, physical sticky notes, because sometimes analog just works, and wrote down 3 words. Humility breeds wisdom. "First lesson," I said, handing it to him. Free of charge. He took the note, read it, almost smiled. "When would I start?" "Monday." "And Brandon, First thing you're going to do is document everything, every system, every process, every file, in triplicate, with version control. And yes, we're keeping physical backups. That seems, I raised an eyebrow. Entirely reasonable, he finished. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Brandon? He looked back. Lose the move fast and break things mug. We're more of a move deliberately and fix things kind of team. He nodded and left. Through the window, I watched him walk to his old office and retrieve the mug. He stood there for a moment, looking at it like it was a relic from another life. Then he dropped it in the recycling bin and walked away. Sarah appeared at my cubicle, coffee in hand. You're going to mentor him, after everything? Everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes, I said. Besides, he's not wrong about everything. Some of our systems do need updating. We just need someone who understands that updating doesn't mean erasing. Chief Compliance and Information Security Officer Madeline Carter, the diplomat. Sarah teased. Who would have thought? Don't get used to it, I said, turning back to my screen. Tomorrow I'm implementing mandatory backup training for all staff. Anyone who complains gets to hear the full story of the great Brandon Knox digital disaster of 2024. Sarah laughed. That's the Madeline I know. As she left, I opened a new folder on the shared drive, named it Corporate Memory Project. Inside, I created subfolders, Historical Documentation, Lessons Learned, and Why We Keep Everything. The last folder got a special file, the $500,000 delete key, a cautionary tale. Some stories are worth preserving, even if they're not stored in the cloud. Wednesday afternoon. And I was deep in spreadsheets when Brandon appeared at the office pantry where I was refilling my coffee. He wasn't alone. 3 other junior executives trailed behind him like ducklings. The new innovation team, or as the rest of us called them, Brandon's apology tour. Madeline, Brandon said, his voice carrying that forced casual tone of someone trying too hard to seem relaxed. Just grabbing coffee. You know, fueling the innovation engine. The junior executives laughed, that nervous laugh of people who weren't sure if they should. I stirred my coffee slowly, the spoon clinking against ceramic in the awkward silence. Around us, other employees had stopped their conversations to watch. Kevin from IT was by the microwave, frozen mid-popcorn retrieval. Sarah from legal stood by the refrigerator, holding her yogurt like a spectator with a snack. Innovation engine, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it now? Brandon's smile flickered. Look, about Monday. Which part? I took a sip. The part where you deleted 20 years of work? Or the part where you almost cost us $500,000? The part where you saved us, he said, louder than necessary. Playing to the audience, I wanted to thank you, publicly, for maintaining those backup files. Ah, so this was his angle. Public gratitude. Make nice in front of witnesses. Show everyone that Brandon Knox was a team player who could admit his mistakes. Very strategic, very calculated, very Brandon. You're welcome, I said simply. He waited, clearly expecting more. When I didn't continue, he pressed on. I was actually telling the team here about your filing system, how you had the foresight to not trust you. I set my mug down on the counter. That foresight? The pantry had gone cemetery quiet. Someone's lunch was burning in the microwave, but Kevin didn't move to stop it. Brandon's jaw tightened. To maintain redundancies, it's actually quite admirable in a traditional way. Traditional, I nodded. Like keeping contracts longer than 90 days. Very old school. One of the junior executives, a young woman with an MBA pin on her lapel, nervously laughed. Brandon was just explaining how we're going to blend the old and new approaches. Were you? I turned to face him fully. Tell me, Brandon, what exactly are you blending? Your revolutionary system that couldn't find a single document? Or my boomer energy that saved your career. Brandon's face was flushing now. That particular shade of red that meant his TED Talk composure was cracking. I don't think we need to. You're right, I said. We don't need to do anything, except maybe remember that innovation without foundation is just another word for chaos. I picked up my mug, took another sip. The burnt smell from the microwave was getting stronger. Finally, Kevin moved to stop it, pulling out what looked like the charred remains of a burrito. Brandon tried one more time, his voice dropping to something almost sincere. Madeline, I really am grateful. Those files, that backup, had a name, I said quietly. Everyone leaned in to hear. I named that backup folder. Do you remember what I called it? His face went from red to white in record time. The junior executives looked between us, confused. I don't. In case of arrogance, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, clear enough that there would be no mistaking the words. That's what I named it, in case of arrogance. The silence that followed was beautiful. Perfect. The kind of silence that would be remembered, repeated, turned into office legend. The day Madeline Carter ended Brandon Knox with 3 words. Sarah coughed, trying to hide a laugh. Kevin dropped his burnt burrito in the trash with unnecessary force. The junior executives stood frozen, their innovation engine thoroughly stalled. Brandon opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. You know what? I continued, my voice conversational now. That folder name was prophetic, because your arrogance almost cost this company everything. And my paranoia, my boomer energy, saved it. I picked up my coffee and walked past him, past his stunned disciples, past the gathering crowd of employees who would spend the rest of the day dissecting this moment. At the doorway, I turned back. Brandon, Monday morning, first thing, you're going to learn our backup protocols, all of them. The old-fashioned, traditional, boring protocols that keep this company running. He managed a nod. And Brandon, I added, bring a notebook, a physical one, with actual paper. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. I left him standing there in the pantry, surrounded by witnesses to his complete and total defeat. The innovation revolution was officially over, ended not with a bang, but with a backup drive named for exactly what it was meant to prevent. As I walked back to my desk, I heard the conversation starting behind me, the story spreading. By end of day, everyone would know about Brandon's boomer files comment and my in case of arrogance folder. Some lessons need to be learned publicly. Some humility needs witnesses. And some backup drives deserve to have their names remembered. Thursday morning, Brandon's resignation letter appeared on Patricia's desk. By noon, his office was being cleaned out. The sustainable bamboo frame went into a box. The standing desk was lowered one final time. The revolution had eaten its own revolutionary. I didn't see him leave. But Kevin from IT told me Brandon had stopped by the pantry one last time, stood where our confrontation had happened, then walked out without a word. His Apple Watch still buzzing with notifications he'd never answer from this building again. Patricia called me in that afternoon. The external drive sat on her desk again, but this time like a trophy. He's gone, she said simply. I heard. That scene in the pantry, in case of arrogance. It's already legend. Facilities is considering putting up a plaque. Please don't. Patricia smiled. You know, in 20 years of management, I've never seen someone destroy themselves so thoroughly with so much help from the person they wronged. I didn't destroy him. He did that himself when he hit delete. No, Patricia said, leaning back. You gave him every opportunity to save himself, to admit his mistake with grace. Instead, he tried to make you a prop in his redemption story. She was right. Brandon could have survived the file deletion, could have learned, grown, become better, but he'd chosen performance over penance, tried to use my backup as proof of his wisdom instead of his weakness. The board wants to know about your backup system, Patricia continued. They're impressed and terrified. Impressed you had it, terrified that we needed it. And they've approved your new budget, proper backup infrastructure, cloud and physical. Redundancies on redundancies. The full boomer energy package, as I believe you called it. I laughed. Actually laughed. I never called it that. No, but you should have. Own it. Madeline. You've earned it. Over the next weeks, I rebuilt our systems, not with innovation for innovation's sake, but with careful, thoughtful improvements. We kept the old folder structures but added better search functions. We maintained physical backups but also implemented proper cloud storage. Evolution, not revolution. The younger employees started coming to me with questions. Real questions. Not Brandon-style pronouncements disguised as consultation. They wanted to understand why we did things certain ways before suggesting changes. Jessica from Vendor Management created a new training module, learning from the Brandon Knox incident. Sarah from Legal made it mandatory. The "in case of arrogance" folder became something else, a reminder that confidence without competence is just destruction waiting to happen. That wisdom isn't about age, but about respecting what came before while building what comes next. 6 months later, I was reviewing our quarterly compliance reports when Kevin stopped by my office. Yes, I had Brandon's old office now, though I kept a regular desk instead of the standing one. You'll never guess who just connected with me on LinkedIn, he said, showing me his phone. Brandon Knox. His profile now read, Digital Transformation Consultant, emphasis on preservation of critical infrastructure. He's learned something, Kevin said. Maybe, I replied. Or maybe he's just learned to use different buzzwords. But then I read his latest post. It was about the importance of backup systems, of respecting institutional knowledge, of understanding before innovating. At the bottom, in small text, he'd written, Learned this lesson the hard way. Sometimes the best innovation is preservation. I didn't respond to his connection request, didn't like his post, but I didn't block him either. Everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes, even if that lesson costs $500,000 and comes with a side of public humiliation. My external drive still sits in my desk drawer. Not in a tax receipt box anymore. It has its own fireproof safe now, officially sanctioned by the company, but I kept the label, that little piece of tape with handwritten words, in case of arrogance. Because in corporate America, arrogance isn't a possibility, it's a certainty. And the only question is whether you'll be the one holding the backup drive or the one begging for it. I'd learned long ago which one I wanted to be. The young ones call me paranoid. They say I overdocument, oversave, overprepare. They roll their eyes when I insist on triple redundancies and physical backups. But they also sleep better knowing that if someone hits delete, accidentally or arrogantly, Madeline Carter has a backup somewhere. In a safe, in a cloud, in a box that looks boring enough to survive any innovation revolution. They call it boomer energy. I call it job security. And somewhere out there, Brandon Knox is probably telling a room full of startup founders about the importance of heritage data preservation and institutional knowledge retention, using my lesson as his wisdom, turning his failure into consulting fees. Good for him. Really. But I kept the receipts. The actual receipts, in triplicate, with timestamps, in case of arrogance. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of corporate revenge and the power of keeping backups, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts. Have you ever dealt with a Brandon in your workplace? What's your best revenge story? Let me know in the comments.